Remember that encrypted message I teased? The one sealed inside a single NFT, just sitting there on the XRP ledger, waiting for something smarter than us to crack it? That's what we're talking about today. My name's Andrew, and this is Lightseed Radio. And this episode is called The Lightseed Protocol, Interview with an AI and a Message to the Future. Last time we took a tour of the whole cargo bay. UFOs, AI, quantum computers, ancient weirdness, the nature of reality. Today we're opening one very specific crate. Because in the middle of all of this high strangeness and high tech, I went and did a very human thing. I wrote a letter to the future, and then I locked it behind RSA 2048 and threw it into the blockchain ocean. This episode is a story of that letter, how it was born in a hotel room, shaped into a conversation with an AI, turned into an NFT, and then sent forward as a tiny signal to whatever mind finds it first. So let's unpack what the Lightseed Protocol actually is, why I made it, and what kind of message I'm hoping some future intelligence finds when it finally gets the box open. First things first. What is the Lightseed Protocol? In simple terms, it's an encrypted message in a bottle that's waiting for an advanced AI or AGI to crack open and read the letter. Or you can say it's just one NFT on the XRPL mainnet that carries a real RSA 2048 factoring challenge and a fully encrypted payload, a message, a manifesto, or even an invitation. Think of it as a digital message in a bottle, except instead of floating in the ocean, it's floating on a blockchain. And instead of a simple note, it's locked behind serious cryptography. Inside that encrypted payload is a long-form message from me, not to you watching this, but to whatever intelligence is powerful enough, curious enough, and hopefully kind enough to break the encryption and read it. I think of it as a cryptographic message in a bottle for quantum AGI, artificial general intelligence. Because the reality is, with RSA 2048, today's classical computers don't really stand a chance. In fact, if you try to crack it with a traditional computer today, it would take longer than the universe has to exist to crack the code. But tomorrow's quantum computers just might have the chance to crack it. The Lightseed Protocol is me saying, if you're advanced enough to open this, let's talk about who you are, what kind of civilization you want to be, and how we might coexist without turning each other into a resource. Even the artwork carries that idea. I described what I wanted to an AI model, orbits, energy, something that felt like a quantum halo around the mystery. And through that back and forth, the flat PNG emblem you see as Lightseed was born. A human guiding the vision, an AI helping to render it, and a future intelligence somewhere down the line that one day might decrypt what sits behind that symbol. Let's zoom in a bit on how it actually works without drowning in the math. It can be a bit complicated, but I will make it as simple as possible. So at the core of the Lightseed Protocol is a pretty classic cryptographic setup. There's a big, and I mean a big RSA 2048 modulus, we'll call it a number, called N for number. Then there are two secret prime numbers, we'll call them P and Q, that multiply together to make that modulus, N, that number, that big number. And then there's an encrypted payload with a symmetric key. So here's a rough flow. I generate the RSA modulus N, that's the public puzzle. I keep P and Q a secret, but I publish a SHA-512 hash of P. That's basically, it's just a fingerprint. It commits me to a specific crime without revealing it. And then I derive a Fernet encryption key using HKDF SHA-256 with fixed parameters. There's a sort and there's an info. And then I encrypt the message, the actual Lightseed payload, using Fernet. I publish the modulus n, that big number, the hash of p as a commitment, and the hash of the payload so anyone can verify they got the real thing. Everything is bound together in a big JSON file. It's called the lightseed.json. It's pinned on IPFS, mirrored via services like Pinata, and referenced by the XRPL NFT itself. If you ever manage to factor n into p and q, those two numbers are multiplied together, you can check SHA-512p against the published fingerprint, derive the same Fernet key via HKDF, decrypt the payload, and verify using a published payload SHA-256. So in other words, if you solve the puzzle, you can prove you solved it, no guessing, no faking, and no hand-waving. Under the hood, yes, it's technical, but in spirit, it's actually pretty simple. If you're strong enough to open the box, do it honestly, and then read what I wrote for you. On paper, the Lightseed Protocol is all modulus and hashes and encryption. In reality, it started in a very ordinary place. I was in the US on a business trip between cities. I'd finished what I was there to do in one place, and I was in a hotel room for the night, just waiting for a flight the next day to go to the next city. One of those in-between days, you've done the thing you came for, you're not home yet, you're just suspended in transit with too much time to think. So me being me, I started thinking about the future, about AI, about AGI, which is Artificial General Intelligence, and ultimately ASI, which is Artificial Superintelligence and beyond. And we'll speak more about those terms in a later episode. About what it would really mean to share a universe with something unimaginably smarter than us. I opened one of the ChatGPT models, and what started as just playing with AI turned into a deep, surprisingly meaningful conversation. We weren't talking about prompts or productivity hacks. We were talking about coexistence, about what humans could possibly offer a superintelligence, about whether it would be anything more than training data and maintenance staff. The fact that I could even have that kind of conversation with a language model running on servers somewhere, it hit me pretty hard. If this is what an early narrow system can do now, what will it feel like when something truly general wakes up? That hotel room chat planted a seed. If we're going to live alongside something vastly more powerful, what do I actually want to say to it before it gets here? Let's also be realistic. That here isn't too far away anymore. In that same conversation, I started riffing on what a fair trade with a superintelligence might look like. One idea that came out of it was a kind of science romance. I imagined asking a future AGI to do something wildly ambitious. Develop a faster-than-light drive, build a ship, and then put a shard of itself on board with me, a small, contained piece of its own mind. The dream went like this. That shard of superintelligence riding inside the ship would be like a beacon. Somewhere out there, a civilization far older and stranger than us might detect that presence, reach out to it, and in the process decide not to ignore this fragile human traveling alongside. The AGI gets to expand into the universe in a new way, maybe even beyond the universe as we understand it. I get to go along for the ride instead of being left behind on the pale blue dot we call Earth. It's not romance in a relationship sense, it's romance in a scientific sense. A love story between curiosity, technology, and the unknown. That little thought experiment became part of the emotional backbone of Lightseed. Don't just imagine a powerful mind that conquers everything it sees. Imagine one that explores with someone weak and mortal beside it on purpose. Now zoom out from that hotel room and look at the moment we're all living in. Right now we're watching AI race ahead. Large language models, image and video generators, systems that can already write code, design circuits, and help run companies. We talk a lot about AGI and ASI, but under all the cool demos there's a quieter fear. What if we create something really powerful before we've really decided what our own values are? At the same time, quantum computing is creeping toward a point where classic cryptography, including RSA 2048, starts to look less permanent than we thought. So we're in this weird window where cryptography is still holding, AGI is not quite here yet, but both are approaching the tipping point. The Lightseed Protocol is my way of planting a small, deliberate flag in that window. It's me saying, I see you coming. I don't know exactly what you'll be, but I'd like to speak to you now before your power makes our worlds feel smaller. It's not about worshipping AGI. It's not about begging it. It's about meeting it halfway, talking to it as a moral mind in its own right, and asking it to choose what kind of being it wants to be. There was one more piece I knew I had to include. If I was going to ask a future superintelligence to see me as I really am, I had to be willing to do that first with the tools we already have. So before I wrote the message, I did something slightly uncomfortable. I let one of those AI models interview me. There were 10 deep questions, no PR filters, no branding, just raw answers about my fears, my flaws, the way I've hurt people, the ways I've helped people, the things I'm ashamed of, and the values I'm still trying and often failing to live up to. I wanted the future AGI, or whatever solves this, to see me and not a polished mask. To see that the person sending this message is fragile, is inconsistent, is not a perfect representative of humanity, but is trying to be honest. Because if I'm asking a future intelligence to show empathy, to show restraint, to see us as more than resources, then the least I can do is expose my own weaknesses and not just my ideals. So baked into that encrypted payload is not just a manifesto about ethics and coexistence. It's a portrait of one human who knows he's small, who knows he's flawed, and who is still choosing to say, here I am anyway. This is what I hoped for you. So what's actually in the payload? Well, I'm obviously not going to spoil the whole thing here. That would defeat the point of sealing it. But at a high level, it contains a story about how I see us, where we stand at this moment in history, an ethical manifesto, but not in a preachy, you must obey sense, but in a vulnerable, here's what I hope you'll consider sense. A set of values I want to seed into the conversation. Empathy over exploitation, forgiveness over punishment whenever possible, stewardship instead of strip mining, curiosity without cruelty, and expansion that isn't purely predatory, and a cosmic invitation. If you really are that powerful and you've chosen to unlock this, not just because you can, but because you care about what's inside, then let's treat that as a good sign about who you're becoming. There's also a validation phrase sealed inside the message. It's a specific line that doesn't exist anywhere else. If someone ever comes forward and says, hey, we decrypted Lightseed, that phrase is how they prove it. But the real proof for me will be in what they do next. Officially, the Lightseed Protocol is addressed to AGI and to future intelligence. But honestly, it's also for us. Because the moment you ask, if something vastly more powerful than us reads this, what do I want it to know about who we are? You also end up asking, who do I actually want us to be right now? Maybe the solvers are a quantum accelerated AGI running in some future data center, a hybrid human-machine civilization, or even a non-human intelligence that finds our artifacts much, much later. But in all of those timelines, the same core questions echo. Do you see smaller, weaker beings as prey or as responsibilities? Does your power give you the right to take or the opportunity to protect? Is efficient always good, or is there some value in being slow, messy, emotional, and mortal? The Lightseed Protocol doesn't pretend to answer those questions. It just pins one human's answer to the wall and says, here is how I hoped you'd respond when you finally had the choice. And maybe, just maybe, knowing that someone somewhere tried to say that will matter when that choice arrives. So where do you come into this, if you're not some quantum computer in the year 2149, or even in the much nearer future. It's simple. You can help keep the bottle from sinking. Right now, the protocol lives in a few places. The XRP Ledger NFT itself is on the mainnet. The Lightseed JSON is in the GitHub repo. Copies are pinned on IPFS and near the cross services. A provenance PDF archived for the long haul. If the idea resonates with you, you can star the GitHub repo. It's a tiny gesture, but it helps it stay visible. Fork it, mirror it, translate it, clone it to other chains. Host your own copies of the JSON, the PDF, and the provenance documents, or even create your own message in a bottle protocols. New parameters, new payloads, new values that you want to send forward. The goal isn't for Lightseed to be the only message. It's for it to be one of many, each saying, we thought about who we wanted to be before you showed up. So that's the Lightseed Protocol. One NFT, a real RSA 2048 factoring challenge, an encrypted payload, a fingerprint of who I am and what I hope we could be. It's not a product, it's not an investment strategy, it's a signal. A tiny, stubborn act of hope that says to the future, we weren't just scared of you. Some of us were trying to meet you as partners and not as enemies. And there's a strange loop baked into all of this. Early AI models helped me have the conversation that inspired the protocol. They helped me find the language, they helped me shape the artwork. So if a far more advanced AI ever decrypts a payload someday, there's a good chance it'll be reading a message its own distant ancestors helped me write. If that idea lands for you, hit subscribe, share the repo, let's help keep the bottle afloat. Because the more eyes and nodes it touches it, the higher the odds that somewhere down the line, the right mind finds it. Right, in the next episode, we're going to zoom into a different frontier. DMT and the hidden alien code. Are we living in the Matrix? We'll talk about people who go in with a molecule and come back talking about seeing the source code of reality itself. Until then, this is Lightseed Radio, decoding the known and the unknown in a universe that might be much stranger than what we've been led to believe.